Do it all.
Add value to every room. Designer tips to push your price, because ultimately that's what you want. So this is going to be a fantastic show, isn't it, Perrie? For all about top tips to add value to every single room in your home. As always with these shows, if you want to read through the blog, you absolutely can. The link will be there for you to do so. Likewise, if you've got any questions, feel free to put them in. We'd love to hear from you. And obviously, Perrie and I will share tips and even some of our own, because we love to put our own little stamp in it. Perrie's certainly got loads when it comes to it. But if you have any as well, feel free to put them in the comments. We love to hear them. But yeah, let's talk about adding value to every single room.
These are our kind of topics, aren't they? Because they're all about creating and making your house feel cozy and warm. And especially at this time of year when it's so cold as well. It just, yeah, we're all in for hunkering down, aren't we? So it's nice to get some ideas on how you could share that. And absolutely, as Sophie said, we would love to get your feedback and thoughts. Something that's really worked for you, something maybe not so well, share, because it's great for everyone else to hear it.
Absolutely. And also, and we do like to highlight this when we're doing these shows, these don't have to be expensive things either, especially as we are just coming out the festive period. We know that obviously there's maybe not a lot of disposable income after obviously the whole Christmas period. These things can also be things that you perhaps already have in the home. You can pick up from a charity shop, or maybe it's nothing you even need to buy. It can just be a simple thing of tweaking things. So don't feel like this has to be expensive. Be resourceful, and that is why this show is great as well. So we're not expecting you to go out and spend loads. But every room is kind of those perfect proportions, and how anything can either, quite a lot of things can look out of shape without the right presentation, which can then kind of distract and almost kind of suppress from a home's value, and potentially prolong how long it is on the market for. Interior designers, and not even interior designers, estate agents and people within the industry, we know this too well. And our days really are about how we can explore ways to add value to every single room with your best interest at heart, including perhaps some tricky areas, whether it be for clients that are selling a new build home for the first time, or whether it be a slightly aged property or a character property. It's all different ways. But definitely interior designers will know this all too well. And there are key ways to selling swiftly at the obviously highest possible price. And they naturally, that's why we're here. And obviously they do work in perfect harmony. And then it is easier to win the hearts and minds of potential buyers, because as we always say, people are driven by emotion. That is what it's all about. So really, what are we doing to capture that and really emphasize that? So with that in mind, we have got a collection. This is almost like your go-to guide of professional design techniques to add value to every single room in that house, to give you that helping hand. And it's from boosting the feeling of space, adding a sense of height, increasing that natural light, potentially widen narrow rooms. And I know you've got a great tip for that, Perrie. I already know what you're going to say for widening narrow. I already know what's coming. And cozy up in style. So do you want to kick us off with kind of boosting that feeling of space, Perrie?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right with your first statement, actually, when you talked about the top tips we're going to talk about. And a lot of it is about feeling. And interestingly enough, I was actually doing a viewing this morning, and the first thing that they said after they'd gone round it, and we do this job every day, don't we, Sophie? So you kind of get the vibe of someone who's looking to potentially buy a property, what they're thinking. And I can just feel that although it was a beautiful home, that there was just a disconnect a little bit. And actually, that's what the lady said. She says, I just don't feel it. I'm just not feeling it. So all these little tips actually really do help you achieve that and to help your buyer connect with your property. Because at the end of the day, you want yours to stand out above everyone else's. And that's the key point of this. And as Sophie rightly said as well, it's not about going out there and splashing out lots of money. You can DIY this yourself and actually recycle quite a lot of what you already have in your home, because it sometimes can be as simple as just moving something into another room. The decluttering thing for me is a really big thing. And again, we've got a link for that as well. So, you know, go on and have a look at that, and that will really help you too. So for me, that's a real big plus. So, you know, rearranging for me is an easy win-win. We've got a guide on how you can do that and get your home marketed the best way that you can. And also it still makes your home look fabulous, but also functional, because people want to see how a home works for them. So the functionality of how you lay your house out is a really important one as well. I had one client who had quite a few viewings. The feedback was that the room in the lounge area was quite small, which I couldn't understand because it was a really nice footprint. But actually, as it turned out, the way that the room was set up with sofas facing one another, so it was almost like a square. And there was that feeling that it just closed the room off a little bit. So we basically moved them to the sides rather than front to front, and what a difference it made. And the property sold the very next viewing. So it can be really simple things. It's not necessarily that you're having to go out and restock your whole home and change everything. So functionality is a good thing. Fulfilling the space within the home as well is really important. And you want to create genuine excitement about your home, and that's really what this is going to do. So the feeling of space is what you really need to boost. So for me, that's the first thing. So some rooms, as I mentioned, can seem smaller than they actually are. Just depends on how you've set them out. We launched a property just a couple of days ago and had that conversation with the client and said, basically, for me, I would be taking that chair out and putting it in the garage. I would be moving that table further into the middle of the room, clear the bay window area so that when people come in, they can just see this beautiful space. Interestingly, my sister-in-law, they're thinking of moving, and the first thing that she said to me was, the next house I want a bay window. And so if you have got one of those, there will be other people out there who think that same thing. So if you've got that function in your home, absolutely open it up. So make sure that you do create your space, and show really the buyers that they've got that extra space, that they've got that flexibility with the room, because you're trying to make them feel, I can see my family living here.
Absolutely.
I had a lady today that I was doing a viewing with earlier as well, exactly the same thing. She said, it's a bit of a fixer-upper. I don't have any issue with that. I'm walking around, I'm in this entrance hall, look at all the space. I'm already thinking I could put a dresser here, and I've got this big room here. I'm going to put mirrors up. So already there was that feeling of connection with the house because you're showing that space off. So the space is really important. So decluttering, for me, you definitely need to look into that and investigate that further. And actually, if you do that, actually the interior design then of the home, it really will work better for anyone that's coming to see it. And it'll be time and maybe not necessarily money. You might need to spend some, depends really on what you have or you don't have. But really that time that you spend will be so well spent, because it will matter at the end as well with the price that you potentially get from your sale too. So a room can either be too much, it can either be filled with overly large furniture, and that's a difficult thing as well. So again, as a seller, if you're downsizing perhaps, then maybe actually if your plan is always when you get your next place to move out that furniture anyway, maybe do that in preparation for selling. You're saving yourself a job later on anyway, but actually it will make home and the rooms look better today, which is what you really need.
It allows it to breathe. And I don't know if you've had this before, Perrie, but when I've been out doing viewings, I've even had clients that are doing, viewing the property said, oh, I can't see them moving out here anytime. They've got a lot of stuff. They've got a lot to do. And it automatically puts like a negative tone in it because they're already going, they're not moving out here anytime soon. This is going to take ages because of how much stuff they've got. And that's where their mind's going. They're not actually looking at the home for all of its benefits and its location and its lifestyle. They're focusing on the stuff that's not going to be there, but they can't see how it's going to go.
I completely agree. We've got a client who was exactly in that situation recently, and it very much was a tough discussion to have, but actually it needed to happen because the first viewing that we did, it was like, oh, there's just too much in here. I can't actually see the space. So, when you're working with an agent as well, it's really important that you have an honest conversation around that, and get the belt and braces approach, because you only get one opportunity to launch your property. You want it to be right, and you don't want to waste those vital viewings. The people that view your house, they've seen it online, they've seen our video work, they are picking it because of its location. They'll be picking it, of course, because of its price, because everyone has a budget. But, they're coming to view it because that house in that location works for them. So you've got to maximise that opportunity when they come over your doorstep. You don't want to waste that viewing, because once they've been, they're not coming back. You can't phone them and say, right, we've decluttered now, do you want to come and have a look? Because they've already fallen out of love with the idea. So for me, that's really important.
Absolutely.
So big furniture can make rooms feel like they've shrunk. So that's something that you definitely want to address. So look for ways to edit that. As I mentioned earlier, even just moving sofas around, taking the chair out of the bay window, small things that actually aren't costing you anything except for a little bit of time and thought can really make a big difference to you for how that room is going to appeal to the new potential owners. So that for me is really important. And if you've got excess pieces that you actually are looking to move on when you go to your next place, there's so many ways you can get around that. You know, you could eBay them, obviously, is the first point, but actually you can do charity donations as well. There are lots of local home rehousing places that really help people that need it. So again, it's a good opportunity for you to help out others whilst helping yourself and getting yourself ready. So for me, make sure the room works. For me as well, when it comes to rugs and flooring, depending on what that room is like, you know, if it's wooden flooring, sometimes people will like to see that if it's a nice size, or if it's too much flooring, a nice rug or a runner, especially in a hallway. If you've got a nice long hallway, those lovely runners that go up the middle and you can still see the beautiful wood up the side. For me, that they're really top tips. And rugs can also make a room look larger. So if it's a narrow space, it can make it feel bigger if it's long. But if it's a smaller room, be careful of rugs as well, because if you've got coffee table rugs, carpet, then suddenly it's like you mentioned, Sophie, there's layers upon layers and it becomes a bit too overwhelming, perhaps, for the viewer to visualize how they can utilize that space. So smaller rugs are a good thing, but long, narrow ones work in larger, narrower spaces as well. You want that continuity with your flooring. So again, for me, as well as showing the flooring off, top tip as well, make sure that it's clean, because there's nothing worse if you've got this beautiful flooring and it's dusty, especially at the moment with all the low light that we have from the sun in the mornings and towards kind of maybe 2-3 o'clock. If that's bouncing into a hallway or into a lounge and all they can see under your legs of your sofas is dust from your rugs, that's never a good look. So definitely you want to address that if you can. So that also will make it feel like an increased space for someone, because they're seeing that shine from the floor, they're seeing the rugs, they're seeing the lovely furniture that you have sitting on top of maybe the wooding or the wood or the tiles or whatever your flooring is. It's just a real good way to show it off as well. So just make sure it has that little bit of sparkle to it. And for that as well, when I talk about your sofas, if you've got sofas that also have legs on them as well, that's always a nice touch, because again, it just feels like the floor is flowing under it, but it gives that space. Whereas if you've got something that comes right down to the floor, it can make it actually quite a closed-in space as well. So if you've got that opportunity, for me, that's definitely something that you need to be looking at. So floating legs on tables, chairs, they're really big things for me. Mirrored legs are a nice thing too. You know, if you've got like stainless steel or mirrored legs, that always looks nice and clean and fresh too. But again, make sure that the dusty area around them isn't clogging things up, because what you're doing with that is you're, again, a little false illusion, because then it's shining off it and reflecting from it. So again, it's just that illusion of additional space, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me as well, when we talk about decluttering, if you're unable to, because you've got a busy life and you've got a family and you've got young children or whatever it looks like for you as a group, then storage boxes are a great thing too. So, you know, children's bedrooms, you want them to look spacious. If you've got toys in the lounge area, which a lot of people will with young children, again, how do you store those? So again, just 3 quick tips: get storage boxes, throw it all in, stick it in the garage, boot of the car, in the attic, under beds. There's so many ways you can kind of hide them, at least while your viewings are taking place and your photos and your video work is taking place, because again, it will make it feel like it's much more spacious too. And that's really just then about you spending some time. And that's what we were talking about earlier, Sophie. It doesn't necessarily need to cost money. It's more about costing in time. But actually, if you don't give it the time, it will cost you money. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely. No, that's a great one.
So in a nutshell, for me, it's clear spaces, decluttering. You've got the link for doing that if you want to have a look. Make sure that your buyers are really getting to visualize what they can do with the space that's on show. You want to make sure that they can see that visible footprint and it doesn't feel too cluttered. Because actually, if it feels that way as well, then they can't actually configure how they can live in that space. And then that's, as you mentioned earlier, Sophie, then they're just into that negative mode, aren't they? So remove any kind of negative distractions would be my thing. For me, that really does kind of make for a welcoming, winning room, and a positive viewing experience as well. So that's kind of your floor space, but what can you do, maybe say, for instance, height-wise, Sophie, how can you make a room look bigger height-wise? Because your floor space is your floor space. What else could people be doing?
Absolutely, and you're right, your floor space is your floor space, and yes, your ceiling height is fixed, but the impact and the illusion necessarily isn't. And again, this is where it's key about what are we doing to just paint that picture. And it's just tricking the mind, it's the illusion. So if you perhaps don't have that property that has the big high ceilings, what can you do to elevate the sense of height? And there is so many, again, little tips that you can do. For example, your curtains, if you have curtains, hanging them high and wide by installing that rail closer to the ceiling height. You don't just have to go for the norm and put it where you tend to see it. Think about installing it slightly higher and dropping those drapes to the floor for a full height wall of fabric. You don't just have to stop it at the sill or even at the radiator. You can drop it to the floor, and actually sometimes that gives that really nice cozy feel as well. It really does.
I think it makes it feel kind of much more luxurious as well. You almost feel like you're in a boutique hotel or something like that, don't you, when you see that whole floor to ceiling part? I think it just looks really nice.
Absolutely. And something else as well, actually, and I actually just saw it. I was down visiting family, and this has been done in my uncle's house, and I know it as color drenching. And it's where you literally paint one single color from top to bottom. So he's actually painted his ceiling the exact same colors as the walls. Exactly, yes. And it's known as color drenching. And a lot more people are coming to do it. I'm starting to see it a little bit more, and interior designers will absolutely know about it. And it is. Some people as well will even go to the extremes of they'll do their ceiling, they'll do their walls, and perhaps even if they've got radiator that's fixed to that wall, they'll also paint the radiator.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, some radiators, obviously, they're not the kind of new modern ones that you see these days. They might just be obviously ones that we've been used to. They get painted as well. So it almost blends in, but it's almost then your eye doesn't naturally stop at the kind of ceiling, it carries on. And it gives that illusion of higher ceilings. And for my uncle's, for example, in his hallway, he has no windows. So you walk up the stairs, it's got doors coming off everywhere because it's a 5-bedroom house, but there's no windows whatsoever. But actually, him doing that has actually made it seem and give the illusion that he's got higher ceilings. So you feel less closed in. So that is a great one as well. It might seem daunting. You might be a bit like, ooh, but have a look into it. If you look at its color drenching, and well, that's what I know it as. And it is just taking that one color, and you're up there anyway. You're painting anyway, so you just continue on. But that gives an illusion. Absolutely. And it can even go as far as your skirting boards if you've perhaps got dodo rails or picture railings. And as well, and this is also something that you sometimes do, is perhaps if you're a lady and you're dressing, you're always told if you're doing stripes, go vertical because it elongates you. It's the exact same when it comes to your home. If you're wanting to make height, obviously ceilings and walls look higher, think vertical stripes. Don't think obviously kind of portrait stripes because they just make it seem kind of wider. So think about obviously your wallpaper and what that looks like and how can we trick the eye in that way. And it's all these little things, and perhaps you could look at adding floor to ceiling shelves, or even, and I've touched on it, your radiators. Could you look at changing your radiators out, and you do get the full height kind of designer radiators as well, which naturally your eye then elongates down.
They do, and with those as well, because we've actually got one and we've put it at the top of our stairs, so you get the long ones, and our one's a grey kind of battleship grey colour, but actually it's got a full stripe down the middle as well of mirror. So again, that just gives that extra feeling of space and brightness and light, because then obviously light's bouncing off it. So that's a great top tip. But with the shelving thing, if you're going to do that from floor to ceiling, we don't want to be stuffing them full of everything so that they're going like this. Be very wary of that, because what we're trying to do here is create space, not fill it with everything else.
Yes. And I think something that you kind of speak about quite a lot, Perrie, is you'll do like groups of 3s or 5s. So if you are going to do shelving, do perhaps a cluster of 3 on this side, cluster of 3 on that side. You might even leave one end empty and just have something on a cluster this side. Just be strategic with the placement. And when we say be strategic as well, be strategic in terms of any low profile seating that you might have, or even sideboards. And these are a great thing as well, especially in a hallway, perhaps to help elongate and also add that sense of height. You could perhaps add a sideboard. Again, something people do in perhaps bedrooms, again, to give the illusion of height, is they sometimes do floor to ceiling headboards. While it's a statement and it really does capture you, it almost creates a feature wall in your bedroom. If you do a full height headboard, again, it gives that illusion of height. This has obviously got a lot of definition to it. And it's all these little things that really do help give that sense of height, which then when you feel height, you don't feel like you're closed in, you feel more open, you feel like you have space to breathe. Lighting is a big thing, absolutely, whether it be through natural light or whether it be through we are being strategic with our light fittings, but perhaps swapping pendant light fittings for ceiling hanging tracks or even downlighters. If you've already potentially got low ceilings and then you've got low hanging obstacles, you could say, at that point, it then again gives the illusion of low ceilings, and that's not what you want, absolutely. And the last thing you want is, if you've got low ceilings, then a low hanging light. Yes, it might be a nice feature, but if somebody comes in and ends up having to duck and dive or bang their head, that's again the last thing you want. We do not want any injuries on a viewing.
I would 100% agree with that. I'm 5'10". Your average male is going to be higher than that height wise. And I was at property the other day, and it was a lovely big room, but they had such a low pendant. As I was walking through the middle of it, I dunked my head right off the lampshade because it was hanging down so far. And that can be, whilst that room was a really big room, if I was a viewer, instantly I would feel this is a small space because I've already hit my light off my head. So how am I going to work in this room? So it's one small thing that might happen that actually just triggers everything else to happen afterwards, and not in a good way.
No, absolutely. So think about that in sense of always think about uninterrupted and think vertical. And what can we do to give that feeling of higher area, not closed in? Because then again, it gives that lift and it allows buyers to appreciate the full space and the full volume of the property while we've not actually increased that ceiling height. It's the same ceiling that you moved in with. We've just done all these little things and it's given that illusion, which is fantastic. So obviously we've spoke about the height, we have touched on light, but how can we perhaps increase that, Perrie?
Yeah, I mean, natural lighting for me is a massive thing, and it's a big factor for buyers as well, because they want to see it's nice and roomy. They don't want to come into a dark hallway or dark rooms. They want to see it lovely and bright. And the reason for that as well for me is that when a room is bright and airy, as we mentioned earlier, it just feels cleaner. It feels more spacious. It feels more modern. It feels fresh. And again, it's just adding to the senses and the experience that the viewer will have when they come through the property, that they can just really visualize themselves being in that property, and it becomes a really positive experience when they're viewing it as well. So how can you harness that? So some tips we're going to cover, and this is a real big bugbear for me. I did a viewing the other day, and my feedback to the seller was, you need to clean the windows, because it was such a bright day. And actually, you could hardly see out of the windows because you haven't expected it. We've had wind and we've had rain, and before you don't always realize it, do you? And it's been a busy time, of course, for people. So cleaning windows inside and out for me is a massive factor, and that will instantly give extra light to a property. Again, the suggestion that you've given, Sophie, about the ceiling to floor curtains, that's fantastic. But when the viewings take place, you need to make sure that they're open, because again, you don't want it to feel dark. So they've got to enhance the space, not make it feel more closed in. So while they're a top tip, when your viewers are taking place and your photos are being done, you absolutely need to make sure that that comes down. So that for me is a big thing. I think for me as well, the way that you angle your slatted blinds. So if you've got slatted blinds, there's certain ways that you can tilt them a little bit to just bring extra light into a room. That for me is really important as well, because it just allows so much more natural light to come in. my top tip as always is mirrors.
Yeah.
Mirrors are a big thing. So hanging mirrors on the walls opposite the windows are a real big plus. You will instantly make a room feel bigger, brighter, and more welcoming for someone. It amplifies all of the natural light, but also if we're at that later part of the day, if you've got nice lighting in the room as well, they will naturally kind of flow off the mirror and just make that room feel much, much brighter, bigger, and more welcoming, and cleaner and fresher, and all those things that I've mentioned before.
Yes.
So I think for
What
me,
I,
that's really important.
what I will say, and you've touched on it, Perry, with the cleaning of your windows. Yes, you want mirrors, but again, please, if the light's going to be bouncing off them,
Yeah.
please watch for little fingerprints, or perhaps if it's a lower mirror, if there's a little, perhaps little dog nose, anything like that, please remember to clean your mirrors. And also the blinds, especially if you've got slatted blinds. There's nothing worse than when you creep them and you can just get a little bit, but you see it all sitting there. There's nothing worse. So make sure you do a full deep clean of all these surfaces, definitely.
I would absolutely agree. And another really simple one as well, if you do want to kind of go to maybe a bit of redecorating as well, for me, ceilings are a big thing. You want them to look crisp and you want to have them bright white satin as well. For me, that or an eggshell finish is a really nice way to do it, because again, that natural light is just bouncing off of it and it makes the room feel brighter, fresher, more spacious, just much more inviting as well for the person that's viewing it. And this is what this is all about. These top tips are all about you getting the best viewing possible, because that's what gives you the best offer possible. And at the end of the day, you want to get moving, don't you? You're selling your home and you want to move on to your next chapter. So little things like that, you know, something you can do in a weekend as you're preparing for sale. Really good thing for brightening up a room. And again, just reflective materials that we spoke about earlier, you know, glass, metal, things that are glazed, the natural light's going to shine from. Ceramic accessories as well is a really good thing. Candlesticks, bowls, for instance, vases as well are a really good thing, because so much light comes off of those. But actually, you can also put your pop of colour. So if you have gone with the neutral or the one colour, as you've said, Soph, then I think for me it's really great to add vases with that additional bounce of colour, especially if you're going to, say, a hallway. There's a nice sideboard, and then you just see this lovely vase and all the colour from the flowers. It's warming, isn't it? You instantly just want to take your coat off and your shoes off and go into that home, don't you? And visualize yourself being there. So that's the experience that you're trying to create for someone, that they feel the way that you're going to make them feel as well. So for me, that's a big thing.
I think you're right, because when we walk into someone, you see flowers, you naturally go over and you smell them or you touch them, because we're driven by our senses. It's what we can feel, it's what we can touch, it's what we can smell. So it's natural instinct. You just go over and you want to smell it or touch it. Absolutely.
No, I agree. So, I mean, these are really easy fixes, but actually buyers will often see poor lighting when they go into a property. And there's nothing worse as well if you go into property and the light bulbs are covered in dust because they won't shine off properly, or if you've got a beautiful ceiling rose light and it's maybe needing 6 bulbs and 2 of them are out, oh, please put the other 2 in. You know, things like that are really, really important. They may not feel much in the big theme of selling a property, but actually it's those little tiny details that actually compound and make it a much better experience. So absolutely, if you have got a lot of lighting in the property, make sure that the bulbs are clean and also that they work when they're switched on. Because again, you know, at this time of year, you can get dull days where you're actually having to have your lighting on during the day. You want it to perform the best way that it can, and really give that a permanent flow through the house as well. So definitely be checking that out. You don't want your house to be dark on viewings. It's a negative experience for the viewer. They won't enjoy it. And ultimately, they're unlikely to put an offer forward if they can't experience a positiveness from it. As you said, Sophie, it's all about your senses, and they want to feel the warmth that comes from entering a home and everything being lovely and bright and welcoming. And that ultimately will get you the best price as well. So for me, that's a really big thing. If you don't do those things and those little simple tasks that are just a weekend maybe of spending tidying and cleaning and making sure that they work, you might not even sell at all, because every viewer is going to have a negative feeling towards the property. So there really seems like a simple thing, but it's really impactful for you. So definitely your natural light is a big, big thing, because it also gives the message, if you've done it well, that your home has been loved and looked after. So again, that's a positive feeling for the viewer to feel. So that's really important for me too. And we've talked about height in rooms, but again, if we've got narrow rooms, we've talked about kind of long runners and things like that, Sophie. But moving on from the kind of lighting side of things, how can people make narrow rooms feel more spacious and more functional for a viewer's family?
Absolutely. And you've just hit the nail on the head, Perry. It's the function part. How can we make it more functional and more practical, a usable space, and not just a, oh, that's just going to have to be a dumping ground, or we can't really utilize that space. So yes, sometimes no matter what you do, a narrow room still perhaps feels like a corridor. However, a few tweaks can enhance that perception part and obviously improve its functionality. And it might just open up new uses for that room that you weren't even thinking of, because you almost couldn't see past the fact that it was a narrow room. Think about your flooring. And again, yes, we have touched on rugs. Think about the rug and the placement of the rug. But really think about your flooring. If it's perhaps a narrow and a smaller room, don't go for a really, really dark flooring that really draws the room even further. Think about maybe a lighter flooring, just because if it's dark, it just draws it in automatically. As I say, thinking about the positioning of the flooring and how you lay it perhaps. And then also think about your walls. So yes, obviously Perrie's touched on have your ceiling that lovely bright, so it's bright and the light captures off and it bounces off it, but perhaps think about having one of the walls a feature wall, whether you do that with a wallpaper or paint it a different color, because then naturally your eye draws to that wall, giving that illusion that it's the bigger wall, and then the other three walls are your smaller wall. So naturally it doesn't feel like a narrow box room. It feels like you have one main feature wall. And then again, it helps with that feeling of this is a bigger space.
Yeah.
Perhaps even think about natural room dividers in terms of a placement. Obviously, Perrie, you've already spoke about the placements of sofas and how we can really be strategic in that sense. But think about where you are positioning it. So if you are going to position against a wall, which wall are you positioning it against? So again, we're not positioning it so it draws the room in even tighter and it feels even narrower. Place your sofa on the longer wall at the correct angle, perhaps with a low level unit or a bookshelf perhaps, but we want to look at opening the space up and making use of the kind of longer or bigger walls. And what I would say is this is something that can be used in bedrooms, dressing rooms, in little snugs, in area of your living room, wherever that narrow room may be. Obviously, just be strategic with it, because actually that first impression on entering that room is everything. When that door opens and you enter into that space, it is absolutely key. First impressions count, and it's all about the staging. And as we've discussed, removing any sense of the space being tricky or not functional or not practical. So yes, this might seem like we're stating the obvious, but you'd be surprised. And until you are obviously given these hints and tips, you just don't know. But these are some absolutely brilliant ones if you do have a narrow room. But likewise, we've said if you have a long, narrow hallway, think about a long runner so your eye naturally elongates. If you've got coat hooks, don't have them all hanging off so that you can't actually, if it's narrow enough, you don't want it to be even narrower with coats.
You can't move.
I know, and you're fighting against it to get in. There's nothing worse. So
and it's really difficult. It's really difficult as well, though, Sophie, isn't it? Because you as a seller, you may have been living in that house for many, many years, and the space works for you. And I often go to clients before they're ready to sell, and consultation, and we chat about what it is that they need. And it's really interesting because a lot of the things that they say, well, we're going to, they might have a list of jobs in their head that they feel that they need to do before they can market their home. And they'll have a list that they want to go through, and they'll talk about those things and say, Perrie, go and just give me your advice. I'm not really sure what I should be doing and what will work best. That these are the things that we want to do. And they'll maybe give me 3 or 4 things that they want to do. And 9 times out of 10, I would say to them, I wouldn't do any of those things. But what I would do is exactly what we're talking about just now, because actually people are thinking, well, we'll need to put a new kitchen in, we'll need to change the bathroom, and those things in some instances, yes, but in most instances those things don't need doing. it's actually little tweaky things. It's the decluttering, it's the styling, it's the planning. Those are the things really, actually 9 times out of 10, that the time should be invested in. And it's quite interesting. I don't know if you've come across that, but I often say to them, actually, I wouldn't do any of those things that you've mentioned.
I had it absolutely, and I had it with a client. They were like, "Shall I do this? Shall I do this? Shall I do this?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. Leave that." I said, "But what I will do, you've got a dining room, but your dining room table's collapsed. It's just sitting there pushed against the wall. Just open up the dining room table again and set up the dining room table to make this look like a dining room."
Yeah.
And they did it, and it cost them nothing. The table was sitting there pushed against the wall anyway, but they thought maybe needed to do X, Y, and Z, or this, that, and that. And I was like, just open up the dining room table. That's all I'm asking for. And they're like, "Oh, we were expecting you to come in and give us a full job list." And I was like, "Absolutely not. Use your time elsewhere. Just do that for me." And they did it like that, overnight, done. And they were so like, "Oh, we've done it." They were like school kids that had done the homework overnight. Like, it was great. And it made such a difference. It really did.
And as you say, a very small thing that actually didn't cost any money, just a little bit of time.
Yep. Absolutely. So finally then, Perrie, and I think this is a good one for kind of the season that we're in, cozying up in style. What tips would you give for that?
Well, we've covered off what a room looks like, haven't we? We've talked about space, we've talked about light, we've talked about feeling. But for me, the final touch in the value add for me is absolutely how you dress that room and how you make it cozy, because people want to envisage themselves being in that room, snuggled up, watching TV, maybe having a TV dinner on a tray. As you've mentioned there with the dining table, they're visualizing maybe having their family around for Sunday lunch. It's all of those things you want to kind of make them feel comfortable, cozy, and functioning space. People want to feel warmth when they go into a house as well. They don't want to go into a property and they go, just don't feel it. And that can happen if it's not been done properly. You want the buyer to feel welcomed when they come into the home. Because if they feel welcomed instantly, and again, it's about walking in, it's the smell, it's what they hear, it's what they're seeing, and it's just that whole senses experience that they're having. So for me, you absolutely want to take up some of these little tips if you've not already done so for yourself. So for me, it's layering textiles is a big thing. So if you've got soft fabrics, chunky knit throws, again, if it's a nice big room and you've got beautiful sofas and chairs, it's lovely just to see throws there. I had one client actually who had a really great idea in the bathroom, and everyone has commented on this home when it launched, but it was a large bathroom, and what they had done was actually got a tin bath, which had obviously had a makeover. It'd been painted and designed, but all the lovely big sumptuous towels were all rolled up and in the bath and on the floor. And when you went in, you just thought, oh, I just want to grab one of those and dive in there and just really enjoy this space. So that's the kind of a feeling that you want people to feel. So layering your textures, your throws are a great idea. Velvet pillows are nice for this time of year as well for making it cozy. Woolly rugs are much denser too, so rather than a flat thing, get something that's kind of woolly that when they're walking on they can kind of think, oh, that's nice on my toes. It just creates a luxurious atmosphere. And a wee top tip as well, I've mentioned bathrooms, but if we talk about bathrooms again, we've all got it because we're living our lives in our homes and we're busy people and we've got families and what have you, but you will literally have your shelving in your shower area or on your bath and you've got all your bottles everywhere. When you're at that point where you are staging, absolutely you need a little box that you can put all of that thing in, and then you're bringing out your fancy bottle of soap and your fancy bottle of hand cream or something like that, and that's all you're putting out, and then that goes away because it gets kept for the next year, and then you put all your other things back, because those little things make a real big difference. People don't want to see half bottles of shower gel and toothpaste and all that all up on the shelves. So absolutely really good way to do it. And if you don't want to go for fancy things, even you could buy like a little ceramic soap pump dish or something like that. You can just put your everyday stuff in from Aldi or whatever. It doesn't need to be expensive. It's all about the look. Remember, we're creating a look and a feel. So for me, that's a really easy way for bathrooms for sure. But again, we spoke about lighting earlier as well. So, use warm toned bulbs as well. If it's kind of a late afternoon, it's nice and cozy. You kind of maybe people want to envisage sitting, listening to some music or reading a book, and it just makes the room feel lovely and ambient for them as well. Floor lamps are great. Table lamps are a good thing as well because they, again, can emit a natural glow. So again, if you've got a narrow hallway like we spoke earlier and you've got a mirror at the bottom, if you have a floor lamp near that mirror too, it's just going to create more space and warmth, and make that room feel a bit more snug, as in comfortable to be in. But I think as well, in capturing really deep colours is a good thing too. So if you have kind of gone for a natural warm look, you can accessorize it up with some lovely colours at this time. So we've got a lot of green and we've got a lot of orange at this time of year, haven't we? That really, so for me, they're really lovely. So like forest greens, terracottas, charcoal greys, they all just add extras to it. And if you've got metal or wood in your room, I think that they go nicely hand in hand with those as well, and just make it feel warmer, because wood and metal can feel cold, can't it?
Yes, it gives it that softer feel, a bit more. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think for softening things up and giving it a pop of colour, that's a good way to do that as well. And again, when we spoke about earlier about grouping furniture together, you know, if you've got a nice lounge, putting your 2 chairs together with a little coffee table and a lamp. So again, mum and dad or partners can envisage themselves sat there of an evening and have maybe a glass of wine, a little nip of vodka or whiskey at this time of year, of course. You know, something just like to chill time, a wee gin and tonic and a chat with friends, listening to music, whatever. But a social space is what you're creating, and little tweaks like that can make a big difference too. But again, it goes back to what you said, Sophie, earlier. Don't be pushing everything against the walls, because that just closes everything and makes it not feel very functioning. Seating that's closer together and facing each other as well just does make it feel like a more social space, as I say, and you feel like you've got that kind of snug setup. And again, this is about us creating an inviting space for your viewer. So you want the viewer to walk into that room and go, oh, I could see me sitting there on a Friday night with my friends, or I could see me sitting there on a Sunday afternoon reading my book, or, you know, it's little things like that that people want to be able to envisage and feel about the house. So for me, that's a real thing. You want to create social space in a property if you can. You want people to feel as well a bit of comfort from the space. You know, if they're coming in and you've got throws over your sofas, you know, I'm thinking, oh, that's nice on a Sunday afternoon. If it's horrible outside, I'm snuggling up on the couch. And yeah, I'm nice and cozy. I'm wanting to sit and watch a film. So those little things, again, just positive senses, aren't they? So I think that's what you want. And also you want it to feel like they have a sense of belonging, the person, when they come in to view the house, because ultimately you want them to purchase it. That's what you want them to do. They're not going to do that if they don't feel that they can belong in that room. So it's absolutely about making it feel welcoming for them. Because actually all of those things that we're talking about will lead to good offers, and then that allows you as the seller to move on into your new life and your new home, whatever that plan is and however that may look for you. So for me, that's a big thing as well. So the cozy up in style as well is a really good thing once you've sussed out all the other parts.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I will add, and we've not actually mentioned Perrie, and it's only because in the back of my head I'm laughing because I was just down at my mum's for Christmas. And a good thing as well is plants. Think about adding plants to your space, because again, that helps. It gives that illusion. People can also see you taking care of the plants, but they add a bit of definition and they do help in a space. But please don't go overkill. And I had to have a bit of a conversation with my mum when I was just down, because I walked into the living room and there was 2 big floor to ceiling plants hanging over. There was another 2. So within her living room, there was these 4 big plants. And I walked in and I joked to her, I sat in, she's got a separate chair, and I was actually having to bat one off my face because it was coming over. And I was like, Mum, this is actually like the Amazon rainforest. You've gone a little bit too much. So I was like, we need to just refine it a little bit. Perhaps just get rid of 1 and have 3 or have 2. But 4 in this space is quite a lot. So just be conscious of that as well. Don't have it overpowering where you actually feel like you're sat in a garden centre, perhaps. So just think about your numbers, but they do also help in that space and also do fill it. But just please be careful.
Yeah, sometimes less is more.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think for me, you know, if you are looking for any more guidance, my final take on this really would be click on the link, share your stories. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask them. At the end of the day, what we want to do, and the reason for giving you these tips, is we want your viewers to turn into buyers, and we want you to move. And that's the ultimate reason for sharing all this information with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good way to end, Perrie, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, we'll see you then. Thanks very much, all.